Hi, this is Josiah Moore
and Celeste Reed
with the Ageism podcast.
Before we do anything else, let's give a big thank you to Jennifer Robertson for giving your input. You were a big help, and we couldn't have done this without you.
Today we are going to be talking about ageism, and more specifically, ageism between different generations.
For those of you who don't know what ageism is, it's prejudice or discrimination on the grounds of a person's age. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, our first topic we will be discussing is the OK Boomer trend.
Boomer isn't always meant literally. It can be meant anyone who is resisting change, said Holly Scott in a Washington Post article.
But for the sake of the podcast and for the sake of convenience, we will be referring boomers to anyone who was born between 1946 to 1964, when they were growing up during a period of increasing affluence due in part to the widespread post-government subsidies in housing and education. And Gen Z was born in 1955 to 2012.
Recently, there's been an increased amount of fighting between different generations on social media, which is the cause of this podcast. As a group, boomers were wealthier, more active, and physically fit than any preceding generation.
Josiah, what is your opinion of boomers and Gen Z?
Boomers can be annoying. They don't always base their arguments on facts just because that they're older and have more knowledge than us, but sometimes they can build a good argument. Gen Z usually use facts, but don't always use the fact that they are older as the base of their argument. Also, Gen Z don't blame the world's problems on video games. Celeste, what's your opinion on this topic?
Well, I think that because boomers grew up during a period of increasing affluence, they expect everyone to have it as easy as they did. That's not realistic. Forgive me for this pronunciation. Dr. Mario Katsuilodes, professor of strategic management and entrepreneurship at Qatar University, said the baby boomers basically spoiled them.
What does that mean?
They're basically saying baby boomers spoiled millennials because boomers had it easy growing up and they wanted to make things easy for their kids and spoiled them. But we also conducted an interview. We asked about many things covering these topics, so we have opinions that aren't our own. When we asked Jennifer Robertson about her opinion of other generations, she responded with, "Each generation has its own valuable perspective and experiences. I admire younger generations' commitment to our environment and social justice." She also talked about how she envies the younger generation's ability to use tech with such ease. Quote, "I am amazed at how current technology has enriched our lives and simplified our everyday chores."
Wow, maybe I was wrong. Not all boomers dislike younger generations.
Yeah, it's very important to consider both sides in an argument. We also asked her opinion on OK Boomer, the use of current tech, and the way she acts towards Gen Z. I agree with her when she says that she thinks the OK Boomer trend is disrespectful, but in order to resolve the problems, both sides must sit down and talk like normal people.
That's true.
Personally, I think the fighting is kind of pointless. It's important to stand up for yourself, but I think people are being oversensitive and getting mad at things that don't really matter as much as everyone makes it out to be.
That's a good point. Sometimes I forget there are two sides in an argument, but sometimes I've been wondering what's the cause of all this fighting?
That is a good question. I've been wondering that myself lately, so let's take a look at why boomers and Gen Z are fighting and how we're fighting. The generational divide has always been present in human society, with the older class muttering that kids these days, while Gen Z is complaining that parents just don't get it. Due to the huge gap between the two generations, fighting was bound to happen. My grandmother says, quote, "With 3 grandchildren who are Gen Z, I know it's difficult for them to relate to someone my age. My childhood as a boomer was so different from their childhood as a Gen Z, and our childhoods are a major influence on how we view the world." Unquote. While my grandmother was little, there were hardly any TV screens. They got their first TV when she was 8 years old, and the shows were in black and white, and there were not many kids shows on TV. There were no tablets, computers, or internet then, so she spent most of her time playing outside. Also, cars were rare, and anyone who got a car would have everyone gather to stare at it.
Geez, I cannot survive back then without my computer and Minecraft. That's very different from our childhood today, where everyone gets their first screen before they're even out of elementary school. There's so much, they're so convenient for kids, and they can watch their favorite shows whenever they want, wherever they want. But what about how it was happening? Well, about a whole lot of Gen Z are using OK Boomer as a way to put down boomers. In other words, the gap has become a meme as teenagers aggravated the older generations by referring to them as boomer during disagreements. So it's basically an easy way for younger generations to put out older generations.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It is a quick and easy way to put down the older generations. But like I said earlier, it seems like people are fighting over nothing. It's not one side's fault that Gen Z is being bit disrespectful, but boomers are getting too defensive over dumb insult, and they do seem to put down younger generations for relying on technology.
Wow, that's a really good point. Now that I think about it, it does seem kind of pointless. It seems like Gen Z are treating this issue like a big joke, and that's why they're creating the memes. But boomers are getting super offended. There are bigger problems to worry about than some kids and teens saying okay boomer or some grandparents getting mad about kids always being on their phones. It'd be way more productive if we could just sit down and have a conversation about it instead of fighting. But if I'm real, people can just do whatever they want. I'll just be in my room sleeping and playing video games.
Josiah, you are not the clown, you are the entire circus.
Yep, that's me. But I would like to point out one very important issue.
And what might that be?
Are we just going to ignore the fact that boomers helped develop all of the technology that we use today? It's so unfair and hypocritical.
Okay, Jesus, calm down. You've made your point. There's no need for all that.
Sorry.
But you kind of do make a good point. Boomers did develop and are possibly still getting paid for developing the tech that they get mad at us for using.
Thank you.
Now I'm curious, Josiah. How would you respond if you were just minding your own business but you were playing on your phone in a public setting, and someone who you assume was a boomer, who you don't know, just came up to you and started yelling about how kids are always on their phone and disconnected from reality, and he called you a dumb, disrespectful, rude whippersnapper?
Well, I wouldn't really want to cause a scene, so I would just politely say, "Look at Look, you're the rude person in this situation. You just started yelling at me for no reason. I didn't do anything to you." And also, so boomers helped invent all the technology that I'm using right now. So please leave me alone.
Well, I would probably just be so surprised that I would just kind of sit there and not say anything. Then about an hour after I went back home, I would think of a great comeback and be mad at myself.
That's tough.
My grandmother says, quote, some baby boomers find the generation gap between them and Generation Z to be so wide that they don't even try to relate. Some boomers have an attitude that the younger generation has it too easy, unquote. My grandmother talked to me about how her childhood was different and how she had to iron all her family's clothes as her chores. Now fabrics don't wrinkle as easily. People have dryers and now which help you get rid of wrinkles. Kids don't do nearly as many chores, partly due to technology and appliances. Food preparation is much easier due to things like microwaves and convenience foods. Kids are more worldly now due to the internet. My grandmother only knew what was going on in her neighborhood and town when she was a kid. Now kids know what is going on all over the world. Also, travel is more common. My grandmother was 23 the first time she got on an airplane. I first rode on an airplane before I was even 1 year old. Every generation thinks the younger generation has it easier and better.
Kids today have more to learn advanced stuff at a quicker rate than when my grandmother was a kid. My parents are saying, "Wow, you're learning that in 8th grade?" I didn't learn that until I was in high school. The rate of depression is also increasing among teenagers. Parents put a lot more pressures on their kid these days to achieve more. Kids have a lot more to worry about too with their social life. They also have to worry about their figure on social media.
Kids are more socially aware now, which is great. But now we feel like if you say one wrong thing, then everyone will hate you. Social anxiety is just so great. Kids have always dealt with peer pressure, but now there are more things than to be anxious about. There are more popular brands and things to buy.
Here is an example from Celeste's grandmother of Gen Z being disrespectful to older people. Quote, once I went to a restaurant and there were teenagers there with boom boxes and loud rap music. An older boomer couple called the waiter over and insisted that the music be turned off. The teenagers move to another part of the restaurant. The older couple were not tolerant of the loud music in the restaurant.
And here's an example of boomers being disrespected by young Gen Z people. Quote, when I am driving the speed limit, younger Gen Z who pass me want to go faster and yell at me when they pass by.
Your grandmother can relate to Gen Z better because she has 3 Gen Z grandkids. It shows that if you get to know people, you understand them better and not judgmental to them.
My grandma is also very happy about some of the differences between boomers and Gen Z. For boomers, most women can only be nurses or teachers, or they were expected to stay home and raise the kids even if they wanted to work. Now Gen Z girls can do whatever they want with their careers. They don't have limitations that my grandmother's generation had.
So basically, boomers had big different childhoods and can't relate to big problems. But what can we do to close the gap or gain a better understanding of each other?
That is a good point. We could sit here all day and complain, but finding a solution is most important. For starters, try to see both sides of the argument. Try to have an open mind. It's impossible to get anywhere when you are more focused on proving that the other person's wrong instead of trying to work out your differences.
But that's a good point. You should also try to avoid stereotypes, or using disrespectful words as okay boomer or you whippersnappers.
Hey Josiah, imagine 50 years from now some kids start saying, okay zoomer, how would you respond?
At first I'd be shocked, but then I'd remember what we've said to boomers and what their kids are saying now, and I would laugh at the irony that they're using our old ideas against us.
If one of us becomes teachers, we'll do one of the stereotypical things where the teacher doesn't know how to work any of the tech. But I bet if I was a teacher, so many conversations would go something like this.
Miss Reed, can we watch a video?
Hang on, I go full screen it.
Miss Reed, it's a hologram. You have to flick your wrist to make it bigger.
And that'll full screen it?
Yes, Miss Reed.
Wow, that's so cool. Wait, how do I make it start playing?
Shake your wrist twice, Miss Reed. That's exactly how it would go if the school just changed the projectors to some technology that was invented 10 years ago. Yeah, if some of the teachers still don't know how to operate projectors now, I can't imagine what it would be like in 40 years. Just like some boomers don't know how to operate technology that was recently invented, we might be the ones who don't understand how to operate the technology of the near future. Geez, I don't want to be known as the old condescending Zoomer who can't operate the new hologram technology. Now that I think about it, we're just giving a boomers hard time just because they don't understand how to operate technology. Yeah, I think it's a really good idea, and I'd wish that other Zoomers and Boomers would try to make those leaps, even though some are trying to do that right now. In conclusion, in order to close this giant gap between generations, we will need to put our differences aside and try to actually talk and communicate with each other. That's all from these disembodied voices spitting facts. That's all from us right now. Goodbye. Bye.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.